These 10 inventions nearly rewrote history if they could succeed. Yes, many inventions have been lost, and they would have changed the world a lot, but unfortunately, they couldn't. Let's see 10 of such inventions and why they aren't today. 1. The Stanley Meyer water fuel cell. In the late 1980s, there was a lot of talk and debate about an invention by Stanley Meyer. He said he invented the water fuel cell technology to get energy from water. He wanted to change how we make energy by using hydrogen from water, which is a clean and plentiful fuel. His idea was to use a special frequency to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, and then use that hydrogen to power an engine. But when experts looked into it, they found problems and couldn't always get the same result. This made people question if it really worked. Some said it went against the laws of thermodynamics, making them doubt if it could actually be a good way to get energy from water. 2. The Dynosphere. J.A. Purvis single-wheeled vehicle design. It was invented in the 1930s and was a unique single-wheeled vehicle that appeared during a time when people were coming up with new ways to get around it. It was designed to be a small, modern option instead of regular cars. This vehicle had one big wheel that wrapped around it and could go really fast, which made it seem efficient and easy to handle. The way the Dynosphere worked was by using the same kind of balance technology you see in some of today's high-tech vehicles. Its big wheel helped it keep stable, while the person riding it controlled where it went and how fast. Even though the idea was cool and got people interested, it faced too many problems like gyroscopic stability issue, costing a lot to produce, and not enough people wanting to buy it. 3. Otto Warburg's Xerum 525. In 1920, it was invented for cancer treatment by Warburg, who had won a Nobel Prize. He found out that cancer cells grow well where there's not much oxygen. Based on this idea, he helped create Xerum 525. This treatment was supposed to bring lots of oxygen directly to the cancer cells to stop them from growing. Warburg's work on how cells use energy inspired this new treatment. He thought that by targeting the special way cancer cells process energy, Xerum 525 could really make a difference. At first, people were hopeful, and there were some good results, but the treatment didn't catch on everywhere. The main problems were that it didn't work the same way for all cancers, and the effects varied a lot. Also, there weren't enough thorough tests done to convince the medical world to use it widely. 4. The Antikythera Mechanism from ancient Greece. In 1901, divers found an old device in a shipwreck near the islands of Antikythera. This device, from around 100 to 200 years before Christ, is often called the world's oldest analog computer. People are still trying to figure out exactly who made it and why. The main reason this device, known as the Antikythera Mechanism, was likely made was to help with astronomy and keeping track of the calendar. It was probably used to follow the paths of stars and planets, predict eclipses, and find out where the sun, moon, and planets were in the sky. This fits with how interested the ancient Greeks were in astronomy and their need to keep time accurately. The inside of the mechanism was pretty smart but complicated, but had gears and dials that moved together to show how celestial bodies moved, based on math. But we still don't fully understand why it wasn't completely accurate. Some people think the gears weren't quite right, or maybe the design was too complex, which made it a bit off. 5. Wilhelm Reich's Cloudbuster. It was created in the 1950s, and Wilhelm Reich wanted to change the weather with it, especially to make it rain in places that really needed water. Reich believed that the weather could affect how people feel and thought his machine could break up clouds or bring moisture by handling a special energy he called orgone. The Cloudbuster was made of hollow metal tubes hooked up to water. Reich said these could grab and move orgone energy around, but most scientists didn't buy it. They said the machine didn't work, as Reich claimed that his ideas about orgone energy didn't match up with what we know about physics and weather. They ended up calling his theory pseudoscience, which means it wasn't considered real science. 6. The AeroVironment SkyTote. The AeroVironment SkyTote was an exciting idea from Paul MacCready back in the late 1970s. He wanted to change how we get around by creating a small, airship-like vehicle. MacCready was famous for his airplane designs and cared a lot about the environment. He thought the SkyTote could be a greener option than regular cars because it would use wind to move around in the air. The SkyTote was made to float like a balloon and could be steered easily. It was built using light materials and was designed to glide smoothly through the air. The goal was to help reduce traffic jams in cities and cut down on pollution, providing a calm and efficient way to travel. However, despite its cool concept, the SkyTote faced several technical problems. It was tricky to manage how it floated, wind conditions could be unpredictable, and there were also safety rules for flying to think about. These issues, along with the high cost of making and keeping the SkyTote running, made it difficult to produce them on a large scale. 7. Buckminster Fuller's Dymaxion Roadhouse. It was created in the 1920s and was a futuristic idea to change how houses were built. Fuller wanted to make cheap homes that used less energy and were good for the environment. He thought these houses could be made in larger numbers to help with housing shortages. The Dymaxion Roadhouse was based on Fuller's idea of using lightweight materials and making the most of space while being eco-friendly. It had a round shape to save on materials and create more room inside. A central column supported the roof with cables, allowing for open layouts and flexible living areas. It also used natural airflow and sunlight to save energy. Even though it had smart features and cared about nature, the Dymaxion Roadhouse didn't catch on widely. One problem was it wasn't well insulated, so it was hard to keep warm or cool in extreme weather. Also, its unusual design and how it was built made it tricky for builders to work with. 8. Baby Cage by Mrs. Robert C. Lafferty. The baby cage, also known as the Lafferty cage, was an invention from the early 1900s, around the 1920s, by Mrs. Robert C. Lafferty. It was made for families in cities, especially those in apartments without yards, so their babies could get fresh air and sunlight. This cage looked like a small wire basket or cage that could be hung on the outside of tall buildings' windows. Parents could put their babies in it to let them enjoy the outdoors safely. But people didn't like the baby cage. They worried that hanging babies in cages outside windows was dangerous. They were concerned about accidents, falls, and bad weather. Also, they wondered if babies would feel happy and safe in such a setup. Because of these worries and changes in how people think about keeping children safe and happy, the baby cage didn't become popular. It's more of a thing we look back on now, curious about how people tried to solve problems in the past. 9. Vibrating Belt Machine by Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. A physician, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, made this machine around the 1920s at the Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan. He wanted to offer a way to lose belly fat and strengthen muscles without surgery. The vibrating belt machine worked like this. It had a belt with vibrating motors that moved quickly, which was supposed to make muscles work and burn fat. But even back then, experts weren't sure if it really worked. Some users said it felt like their muscles were getting a workout, but there wasn't much proof that it helped with long-term weight loss or getting toned. Scientists doubted the vibrating belt machine because there wasn't enough proof it did what it claimed. Later studies showed that the vibration didn't do much for losing fat or getting muscles compared to regular exercise and eating healthy. Nowadays, the vibrating belt machine isn't talked about much in fitness and weight loss discussions. It's seen more as a thing from the past that's interesting but not very useful for getting fit or healthy. 10. WASP X-Jet by Troy Bradley. The WASP X-Jet, also called the WASP Jet by Troy Bradley, is a cool flying gadget made for people. Troy Bradley, who's really good at flying and inventing stuff, made the WASP X-Jet in the early 2000s. He wanted to make a small and easy-to-move flying suit that ran on jet power. The idea behind the WASP X-Jet was to make personal flying possible and make it easier to travel short distances. This gadget uses jet engines that are put into a wearable frame like a skeleton. To fly it, you use your hands and body to steer, just like you would with a regular jetpack. But even though the WASP X-Jet was super cool and had lots of potential, it had some big problems that stopped it from working well in real life. Power-to-weight balance for jet engines, safety issues, controlling heat, staying stable in the air, and dealing with rules and regulations. All these things made it hard for the X-Jet to be used for regular personal flying. These are the 10 of many such inventions. These amazing ideas were forgotten or changed a lot, and the inventors didn't get much credit. Imagine if these inventions had been widely known and celebrated. History might have taken a completely different path. If you want to see more about the world and its evolution, subscribe to our channel and let me know the name of the invention in the comments you feel could have changed the world most.